Welcome to the You've Changed podcast. My name is Kate. This is the podcast where I talk to entertainment industry professionals about moments of change in their life. And today I have the wonderful and hilarious, very talented comedian, writer, actor, soon to be podcaster, Michelle Shaughnessy.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. I'm so happy you're here. A fellow Canadian in the house.
Yay. Am I the first fellow Canadian you've had on?
Yeah, I had Katie Green, who's American, but and I've had a couple of Americans, but no other Canadians.
Oh, good.
I get jealous. I'm like, no, stay away. Stay away from me, you dirty, filthy Canadian whores. How long have you been in the UK
now? About a year. It's like a year and like 2 weeks or something.
And so far, thumbs up?
So far, comedy scene, thumbs up.
Personal life, in a ditch,
well,
cry.
not so much personal life, just quality of life is a little different. Like I find that takes some getting used to.
Do you think it's a better quality of life for people over here? Or
no.
Oh,
than
no?
Canada? Are you kidding me?
I don't know. Like, there's different things over here. I guess I'm specifically comparing like London, not generally the country, but like London has so much to offer versus...
It does have so much to offer. I'll give it that. But in terms of like anything administratively is a nightmare.
Yeah, we were just saying that. And then we get yelled at for being too aggressive.
Yes.
We're North American and we fucking know what we want. And we're like, we want service. The service over here is so exceptionally bad.
It is.
It is fucking painful to get customer service here.
It is. And I think that took some getting used to for me because I'm just not used to that, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, healthcare compared to Canada, there's just no comparison. Like Canada healthcare way tops this. I mean, I do some I like that we have the option to go private, but there are some things you just can't afford to go private for, and most people here can't afford to do that. So I find the wait times here absolutely insane.
The wait times are crazy.
Yes.
I have definitely gotten letters before for like specialist appointments where I've gotten a letter and I'm like, oh, this is like an emergency thing I need to talk to a specialist about. And they're like, okay. And then 7 months goes by. I get a letter going, you had your appointment last week.
I just bought health insurance.
And I was like, what the fuck?
I just bought health insurance because of that. It starts this week. So
I didn't even know you could do that here.
Yeah. So that way I have access 24/7 to like a video doctor. And then if I need to see
I have that. I have Babylon.
But if I need to see a specialist, then it goes through their private network. So there's no wait time. So it really... I'm really excited. I don't know why everyone doesn't do that.
You're excited to give them all your diseases?
Exactly, because I feel like the wait times here are just insane. Like it took me like 3 weeks to even get a GP appointment when I first registered.
Ooh,
you know?
yeah.
So little things like that are different. But I do think the entertainment scene here is untouchable compared to Canada.
It's so wildly different.
But I find like just little weird things. Like even the house I'm renting, like, do you remember in the 80s, 90s when you're
not
at
really
home?
in the 80s. I don't remember a lot of that.
Well,
but yeah.
I mean, we're on the same
when
age.
You're,
like,
when you're like a baby.
When you were a kid and you couldn't flush the toilet if your dad was having a shower because all the plumbing was running together. That's not a thing in North America anymore. And here it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't have like the washing machine and the dishwasher. I know I sound so privileged. I can't have those things going at the same time. Like just things like that. Like little things where it feels like I've stepped back in time. A little bit.
Yeah, I do
like
feel
the
you
big
on that.
radiators instead of just coming out of a hole in the ceiling. Like,
have you been
like
to the
that.
places where like the place where I get my nails done?
Okay.
Her bathroom is out back in the garden. So you have to leave the building, go out her back path, and then at the back of her garden, it's plumbed. It's not like an outhouse or like a hole in the dirt or something, but it's like it's proper flushing toilet and running water and stuff like that. It's only cold water to wash your hands, but like it's back there, but you have to, in the rain, you have to like put your coat on and your umbrella and go walk out to her bathroom. And I've seen it multiple times here.
Okay.
At businesses and stuff in the back. I don't think probably in houses, but in older businesses and older buildings where like, I guess if you're leasing a space and you're not going to invest in like,
they would just build a bathroom out
putting
back.
it in, right? I don't know, but that feels very like old timey to have to like get your fucking rain boots on and go to the can.
It really makes you wonder, do I really have to go to the bathroom right now?
Yeah. But I wait all the time to go to the bathroom and I'm like so bad. And the number of times I've gotten on a train in this country where I'm like, you know what? I can hold it. And then the train just stops and you're like, this is when I shit myself on a public train. Like this is going to happen.
I feel like that must happen a lot here because
people publicly shitting.
Yes, because things are so far away from each other.
I think people just like publicly relieving themselves of their bodily fluids here. Mm-hmm. People love being sick in the streets. I don't know if they love it. It's just like a pastime that British people get so drunk and they're like, they're just like, it is, as soon as lockdown ended here, you could tell it ended. I remember I was getting up all the time and like I was playing tennis and stuff. And then when lockdown ended on like Saturday, Sunday mornings, as soon as I started going out on Saturday, Sunday mornings for like bike rides or walks or whatever, all of a sudden there'd be like little piles of sick all over the street. And you're like, oh, Yeah.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
hard.
I also feel sheltered where I live. Like
You live in a fancy end.
I do. And you know what? It was just voted the number one. The Times just put out a thing saying it was the number one neighborhood in London. And now I'm like so nervous. Like that means my rent's going to be like jacked because of that.
I went to I did a gig last week in your neighborhood.
Oh, thanks for letting me know.
It wasn't great.
No,
it was like
we could have had coffee, but that's fine.
It was like one of those
You've changed.
I was like, yeah, I have changed. I'm such a cunt. It was one of those like I went in and I was closing the gig. I was like, I don't want to be here. I was dressed in like sweatpants and shit too. I don't even want to say it because it was set up. I don't want to say who it was set up by, but I was just like dreading it. And I walked in and it was like multiple people with like gray hair, and not saying they can't love comedy and not saying they can't be comedy fans. But it was just, you could just tell it was a lot of like posh older couples.
Yes.
And the first comic was like trying to do their thing. And like the Callie Beaton was hosting and she's like a great host and really good at like rallying people. And they were just like,
You know what's funny?
do you know where you are? And I'm like, oh my fucking God.
Other than the King's Head, because most people that go to the King's Head for comedy on Saturday nights
are like comedy fans.
and they're not from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like they're from surrounding areas. Because every time I'm there, I ask who lives in the neighborhood, and most people are like, no, we don't live here.
Yeah.
But I've been asked to do a few shows in the neighborhood by like people from the neighborhood, and I've turned down every single one because I'm like, I don't want to be performing for my neighbors. I know what you're like. I know, like, so I've definitely turned down gigs in my neighborhood, like charity events and things like that.
One of the women in the audience was correcting the comedian's grammar while they were on stage. Like that was her heckle. She was like, it's whom? And I'm like, you fucking are so annoying.
I like the neighborhood. I like the fancy life.
No, I get it. But like, she was so fucking annoying. And then the host was like, okay, Miss Chatty Cathy, what's your name? And she goes, no, I'm not giving my name. So I got up there. I'm like, bitch, you're like fucking chirping in every 5 seconds and you won't give your fucking name. And I'm like, oh my God, you're giving me like, I need therapy. You're just like, it reminded me of one of those women that's like, this is all I'm going to say on the matter. That's that. Case closed. And you're like, okay, well, you shut the fuck up now. And then they come back and go, and another thing. And you're like, shut up. She wouldn't shut up the whole show. And I sort of had to get up there and shut her up and kind of embarrass her and be like, you are really awful and annoying. You remind me of like some old cunty cow. and then people were kind of like laughing at her and she was like okay with it. But like some of the things I was saying, because you know me, some of the things there was a little bit of like, like the pearl clutching shit.
I love that. She probably loved it.
Do you think?
She probably loved the attention. Like, why would you speak at a comedy show if you don't love the attention?
But then as soon as they're like, okay, let's talk to you, she's like, no, I don't want to. I can't fucking. Do you, for like older people at your crowds, if you see a room of like older people, and when I say older, I'm saying like probably like.
You mean like our parents' age?
Yeah, like our parents plus. Would you be like, fuck, this is not going to go well? Because that's my initial thought. I just go, fuck
and you know
me.
What? You'll find this too, the older that you get. And I know we're on the same age, but I think
I'm not aging.
No, I know I think we're basically like within a few months, 6
we're
months
like
of each other age-wise. But I did start comedy before. So I do feel like as you get progressive in comedy, that will change. Because now, I used to be like that when I would see old people, I'd be like, fuck. And now I get like that when I see young people. So if I walk in and it's like all 20s, I'm like, fuck. Like I would way rather be talking to those old people because I find that as I get older, more experienced in my comedy career, I relate more to them than I do the young people.
Of course, that makes a lot of sense, but I have such a level of emotional immaturity that I relate better.
I feel
like the 20-year-olds.
I get that. But
I even had a critic say that.
Because of the age that you are, those older people would put up with the way that you talk to them and love it. As opposed to if it was like coming out of your mouth at 22 years old, they'd be like,
right? Because they go, who are you?
But because you are mature and you're a great comic, I feel like that's in your head. And once you realize that they are going to be fine with what you have to say because, you know what I mean? Like you are more mature. Yeah. It'll be a lot better to let that fear go, you know?
It is interesting you said, I do agree with that because audiences react when a younger person tells them something. Do you know Juliana Rodriguez, the comedian in Toronto? I really, really like her. And I came up with her. She started comedy, I think, maybe even before me, even though she was way younger than me. But she's been going since she was like a kid, basically. Yeah. And she was somebody who I would watch her on stage. I would be like, oh my God, when you get some life experience, you're going to be so fucking good.
That's what people would tell me all the time. I started when I was like 18, 19, and I was working for Yachts when I was like 20.
Yeah,
and people would tell me, like, you have to word things that you say differently because you can't act like it's fact because people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
You know? So, and it's true. As I've gotten older, I've brought back jokes that I dropped when I was younger because they weren't getting good reactions. And now people are like, okay, maybe this person does know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think jokes can change based on how people perceive you. Like even me with all the weight loss, I can tell jokes now that I couldn't before and vice versa. Ones that landed really hard before, people don't like as much anymore. And I notice a difference between it. And I know I've talked to male comics too who say like, Barry Ferns, who runs Angel Comedy, he says when he has his like big, huge beard, people really see him as like this sort of like philosopher on stage, and like he has like something to say, and he's like very kind of poetic, and like people really, there's like sort of like something grand about his persona. And when he shaves it, he gets a much different reaction to the same material.
Interesting.
Do you find that people react differently when you, because you are somebody who's like, I would classify you as a fancy lady.
Thank you.
You are a bit bougie. You have like, you know, the fancy things in life. And do you think if you were to go on stage and you have like your Chanel earrings or diamond earrings or big rings or like a designer shirt on, people react differently than when you're dressed down on stage?
I would have said no, but it's interesting enough because one of the reviews that I got at the festival, someone made and I had my Chanel earrings on, you know, like my cute little dress, my Gucci shoes. And one of the reviewers said something about the way that I talk about money, and I don't talk about money in my set. So they just saw that and perceived, they were like, oh, something about the way that she talks about having money. I was like, I don't say anything about that whatsoever.
Yeah.
So in their head I had. Do you know what I mean?
100.
So
no,
I do think that. But
I totally get it.
I find because I am older, I can dress like that and people don't care. But if I was going on stage at 21 wearing expensive things,
they just
people would have looked down on me. It would have been
money.
mommy and daddy's money or sugar daddy or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now, I think now I can joke about it. I can joke about, oh, I like rich men, I like whatever, and people laugh. Whereas if I was young and doing that material, it didn't go over as well.
Because people would go, oh, I think she's serious. And I think she's like...
Well, because people are like, oh, so you want my husband? Do you know what I mean? But I find like...
Yeah.
It's like nobody wants your husband. Like, but I find,
no one, not even you wants to fuck your husband,
but
lady.
I find when you get older and you're those, around the ages, those people, they find it funny, you know?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I have the same thing you're saying about the whole outfit and people thinking you're talking about wealth when you're not at all just because of how they're perceiving you. And I don't know if I've talked to you about this before. I had somebody who's come to see me, sort of an acquaintance, and after I lost all the weight is the first time I ever spoke about my weight on stage. I never made jokes about it. I never was self-deprecating. I was really self-conscious about how big I was. So I was like, I'm never going to address it. And maybe if I don't talk about it, people won't notice that I'm as huge as I am. And then when this acquaintance, he had seen me a few times and he's lovely and he's like a fan of me. But he's like, yeah, it's so good because you've always talked about your weight constantly on stage. And I was like, I literally never did that. He's like, no, you always did that.
People
I'm like,
do that.
You just saw me as fat on stage and you heard that.
Yep.
And that just shows you how fucked we are when we just like how much your perception feeds into what you're hearing about someone. Like it really colors the shit you take in.
I just need to say for the record, I am not loaded. I'm not I thought that I was more well off than I was until.
But you are a sugar baby.
No.
For the record.
A sugar baby for hire if you know anybody. No, I'm joking.
Aren't they all for hire?
No. I do well for myself.
But you do well and you're like not some young fucking dumb kid. You worked hard to get what you have.
I have, and I am married, full disclosure, and he helps me a lot. But I definitely have a lot less money in this country than I did in Canada because
it like cuts it in half as soon as you move over here.
So I definitely have had to make a lot more sacrifices that I haven't had to think about since I was like in my 20s, living poorly, living paycheck to paycheck because I still get money from Canada every month for royalties for my albums, things that I filmed. And I'm always like, oh, great, thousands of dollars. And then I switch it into British pounds and I'm like, where did all my money go? How am I broke again?
Now you're like, Tesco meal deal, yes,
exactly.
sir.
So it has been a bit of a culture shock here in that regard for sure.
Yeah, and I just think like, here in this country, the classism here is so real and you don't really get it till you hear like how much people love like categorize themselves as like middle class, working class, all of those labels. And I think when they see someone who has money, that's why, because they're so into labels. We're in Canada, we're not as, you can have it and people will be like, okay, cool. But here, if you come up, like I was working class in Canada, we were but lower middle class, working class, I'd say. That's
how I grew up, yeah.
You know, and and it was just kind of like, it was what it was.
Nobody talked about it.
But you don't really talk about it that much.
I was raised where you don't talk about money.
Exactly.
You don't talk about class. You don't, that was so taboo to talk about.
But here it's everything. It's identity.
Like my first week in town, I did a gig in Liverpool and I said a throwaway line and I was killing. And then I said, oh, I got laser eye surgery. I said, has anyone done that? Nobody said anything. And I don't know why this came out of my mouth. I said, okay, I guess I'm the only one here with money. And the crowd turned on me. Like no crowd has ever turned on me in my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what happened. Like people started talking, people were turning their backs to me. I bombed the rest of the set.
Turning their backs to you?
Like people were like talking to their friends. Like, and then I got off stage and all the other comics were laughing and were like, do you just know what you did? Like you just POV shamed Liverpool. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Like I don't know what I did. It was like my third day in this country. And looking back, it makes me laugh hardcore.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know. Like I didn't know that was like a thing.
Yeah.
That they were very proud working class people.
Yeah. I once had an almost all French audience, and I made a joke about French people being disgusting, and they didn't think that was very funny. And I was like, but don't we love making fun of French people?
We do, but
and they didn't love it so much.
Because in Ontario, we make fun of the Quebecois people all the time.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do that joke to French-speaking Quebecois people either. Like they're very proud.
No, you couldn't. Yeah, they're very proud. Of course. Yeah, it's hard. But here, this classism thing and how it's a real thing, because then they see you as they go, fuck you. Who do you think you are? You're some middle class prick. Da, 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 da.
Okay, like, but is middle class considered money here? Like,
yeah,
it is. Okay, that's what I didn't understand.
Whereas middle class in Canada is just considered like you are doing fine.
You're doing fine, but you don't have extra. Like your bills are paid. That's what I would consider.
Your bills are paid. You guys are fine. Okay. You're not going on like big fancy. Yes. But here, if you're middle class, are like la di da. Like middle class here is like you are doing well, and working class is like middle class. Typically, I would say, based on what I know, your mom typically, right, wouldn't have had to work, could have been a stay-at-home mom. So if you had one parent who had the ability, say you come from a 2-parent household and one parent had the ability to be a stay-at-home parent, that would be like, whoa. Really? You're middle class, that's fancy. Yeah.
Because my mom stayed home for most of our lives. But
so you are some middle class.
But we never had money. Like we were always told that we were poor. I don't know if that was just my parents exaggerating the situation. Maybe a little bit of that.
When they die, you're going to come into this massive inheritance.
They've made it clear there's nothing for us. But we couldn't afford to go on fancy vacation.
Yeah, no.
We had shitty cars. Like we never had, you know, I mean, I definitely didn't go without, that's for sure. But like there was never extra money to like go to Disney World or anything like that.
Yeah, we didn't have those kind of things. And like I remember growing up, I was really embarrassed of how I came up at the time. And like my mom used to pawn her engagement ring sometimes.
Okay, and then buy it back?
And buy it back. You know how you can like pawn it and they can hold it and then you can buy it back. And I used to be really embarrassed of that. And I remember going to school for like school field trips, and she would have like a check for me to pay for a school trip from one of those like check cashing like a cash like loan advance, a money market like cash advance place. And I'd be so embarrassed to do it. And now I look back and go, holy fuck, they literally had nothing and they were still trying to be like, okay, let's still try to include you on that. Let's still try to get you on that school trip or whatever. And we'll fucking take out a cash advance on our salary at a crazy high interest and pawn our engagement ring to pay our grocery bills. So we definitely had times where we went without, and then it kind of got easier as we got a little bit older. But it was rough for a while. We never went without food, hence why I was such a fucking fat pig when I was younger. But like that was the one thing we always had, as most poor people like have, you know, not great nutrition and eat a lot of fast food and shitty cheap poor food, whatever, right? That's part of it. But like, yeah, there was times we went without, but here it's just this chip that people wear on their shoulder, and it's like it's incessant how much it is pervasive within the culture here.
It's so bizarre to me because nobody, like doing shows in Toronto and stuff, nobody would say to me, like I remember a comic said to me, she was like, you look rich. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, what does it mean to look rich?
But nobody would have ever said that to me back home. But
I guess what does it mean to look poor?
Well, I think what we've talked about this before is people don't really wear labels here. Like you'll see a designer purse, that kind of stuff. But where in Toronto, you see everybody wearing the Balenciaga, it says a million times on your shirt, or like, you know, the big Chanel or the Gucci tracksuit. So I think when I first moved here, that was a bit of a shock to me that I was like, oh, I look tacky wearing this stuff here.
Yeah.
Whereas back home, you would go to like Yorkville and everyone would be dressed like that. But I find the rich people here don't wear a single thing that you can recognize as label or expensive.
But you'd recognize it if you knew, yes. If you know. It's one of those like, you see them and you go, oh, that's like this. I just was seeing online, I fucking forget. It's like the oldest handbag manufacturer in the world. It's before Hermes. It's one of the top ones. They were the ones who first coined the term handbag.
Okay.
And it's like they first created it. It's one of the most exclusive brands in the world. It's like above Birkins and all of that shit. But it like, I can't even remember the name. That's how fucking ghetto I am. Like, it's one of those like, you have to know, but if once you know it and you see it, you go, holy fuck, that person has money.
Yeah, see, it's just different here.
Those kind of brands are much more popular here. Like you can tell, like I know men wear those signet rings on their pinkies here, and they're crusted with like their family logos, and they're part of these, I forget what they're called. They're these like private members clubs, but I forget they're called this thing here. And it's like, if someone goes, oh, I'm going to go to my whatever club, people go, oh shit. And like, that's how you know somebody's wealthy. So it's like these quiet signs of wealth, but people here know them. Whereas like to us, I think they just go over our head because we don't know it. But the wealth here is very old money, a lot of it. And it's very quiet.
I think that's was one of the big things for me, is that I realized that like, well, I would never wear any of my like branded clothing around town here. I think I would look.
Give it to me. I'll fucking wear it. Fuck that.
I think I would look like I'm trying to be something. Do you know what I mean?
Person. Yeah.
But I just think the people who dress like that here aren't rich. They're just spending what little money they have on.
I agree. I think a lot of people who wear, in this country, I would say a lot of people who try to wear labels and stuff, or you can see so many fake bags.
Called chav? Isn't that what that? Do you know that saying?
I know the saying. I know it's super offensive to say chav because chav means council, housed, and violent.
I didn't know that. So I just remember like the Burberry check thing.
It's like the stereotype.
Like, nobody wanted to wear that because of that stereotype.
It's like a stereotype of a type of, I think, girl who grows up on a council estate. So with not a lot of money, from working class background. And it's like basically, it's an insult to people from a particular type of background. So it's a really derogatory thing. But back in the day, I think like in the whatever, it was like a popular slang term over here. So I don't really know all the dynamics of it. And then somebody recently was talking about it and they go, oh, that's actually like a super insulting term.
I'm glad you told me that.
For people who are like from council houses. Because it's this really negative stereotype that if you grow up in council estates, you're like this, like you're aggressive, you're violent, you're uneducated, you're like all the kind of stuff that comes with a lot of people like throwing that on people with less income kind of thing. So so there you go. But don't be shouting that out if you go to a gig somewhere.
For me, like growing up without having I would never have designer clothes when I was young.
No.
Like my parents,
I did, but they were all fake.
We used to shop at like Bargain Harold's in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada, like from the discount bin, that kind of stuff. So I think for me, when I did start to feel like I was a little better off when I got older and got married and had that kind of life, I did overcompensate by buying those designer things, by being like, look at me now.
Yeah.
Whereas now,
I get that.
I want to get to the level of wealth where I have those secret purses that only a select few know. So that's like my next goal. But I definitely overcompensated. Looking back, I'm like, why did I spend this money? Like, why did I need like a $2,000 shirt that like now I can't even wear in London? You know? Yeah,
I mean, it is a thing though that you want to do. I have a friend who grew up working class here, and he really goes for only designer now. He's all about labels. He's all about looks. He's about everything. He's like the loveliest guy ever. But I'm always want to be like, you don't need it. Like you are good enough as you are. But he just feels like he needs to look a certain way, live a certain place, belong to a certain gym, pay crazy amounts of money. And like, if you're making bajillions of dollars and you can upkeep it, it's fine. But I think a lot of people are spending. My thing that I heard is if you can't afford to lose it and replace it, you can't afford it.
I think that's the situation that I found moving here, because I did lose my Chanel earrings, one of them when I moved here, and I can't.
Are they like real diamond earrings?
Yeah, no. It's most of Chanel stuff's anything that has the logo is just costume jewelry.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're paying for the logo, but they were still 900 Canadian dollars.
Yeah,
and I can't replace them.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if I was in Canada, I could, but here, because I have rent, I have, you know what I mean? Like, it's just different. Yeah. So I do think for me, I tried to carry the life that I had in Canada over to my life here, and I just can't.
Yeah.
You know, because I do have more bills to pay, more responsibility here than I did when I was at home. And that's been a bit of a shock. I think I'm fine with it now, but I think for the first few months here, I was in denial. Like my first week in town, Were you
blowing through lots of money?
I hired a chauffeur for like the first week. Like, what is wrong with me?
No, you did.
Yes, I did. Because I didn't know
didn't you just say, to clarify, you're not rich? And you go, I had a chauffeur for the first week in London.
I'm not. Okay, I was in denial because I came with a lot of money, and I was in denial.
I want to live in denial. Give me the directions to that place.
I stayed at the Waldorf. I hired a driver because I was
you stayed at the Waldorf and you had a driver.
I did, because I was in denial about how far my Canadian money would take me. It's not far. And I thought I would do better here quicker than I have. So I definitely had those moments of denial. And then, you know, my husband back home being like, you can't do this. Like, you're there to make money and make a name for yourself, not to spend all that money that you went with.
A chauffeur
through it. I burned
at the Waldorf. I will never get over that. I'm never going to let you live that down.
Expensive. They're not that expensive. They're not that expensive.
I take the bus. That's not that expensive.
Well, now I do. Now I take transit everywhere. But I think for me, I didn't know my way around, and I was a little scared, like on the transit in some neighborhoods, and you know. But I don't know. I was definitely in denial.
I actually love that. I kind of love that. I love it how like you came here to be like Eloise and live in the fucking hotel.
Right?
And live your best life. And then slowly you're just like making your way further and further out of central London into like
And the
poverty.
day that I lost that Chanel earring, I was like, this is it. It's over. Like now I'm like, my life is over. It's time to have my new
slitting your wrist with the remaining Chanel earring, the little tiny earring.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna. I have to be more mindful of the way I spend here, and so I can't go out and buy new ones. So I'm like, I like taking the other one. I'm like, this life is over. Like
what did you do with the other one?
I just have it up.
Is your dog?
I'm
wearing
maybe get a brooch or something. And I don't know, but
cute.
I'm like, that to me was very significant. That like. I'm not who I used to be. I'm like, things have changed.
And they say white women don't have real struggles. Hello, you lost your Chanel earrings and you can't live at the Waldorf with your driver.
No, I can't.
That is hard stuff.
It's not fun, but I do have struggles.
I know you do. Well, let's talk about that. So the whole idea of the podcast, we've talked before a lot about change and changes we've made. It doesn't have to be anything like big or crazy or dramatic, but what is something in your life that has changed, that has sort of changed the path of your life and altered where you're at?
Well, I think moving here was a big one. I think at home I was very comfortable. I lived with my husband in a house that I didn't have to pay for. Like I got to a point, especially during the pandemic when comedy shut down, and my husband works in television, film and television. That didn't shut down. It did for a bit, but not as long as comedy.
They were pretty.
Yes,
they were doing very strict about all the testing on sets and stuff, but they were pretty strong going throughout the whole thing.
They shut down for a little bit. Everything did. But he was working and I wasn't, and I started to feel like I was just a housewife, and I got too comfortable, And
I kind of feel like I would love that.
It wasn't awful. I'm not gonna lie. Like I was just there. I got so obsessed with just shopping in Yorkville every day, going for lunches, doing whatever. But then I reached this point where I was like, this isn't what I want for my life. Like I want
you need
career,
to be fulfilled.
and I want, so that's why I moved here. Like I kind of uprooted everything and just left, and that was really tough, How
was that conversation? How did that go? Was it like a gradual conversation?
Well, I kind of did the slow burn.
Come about that you wanted to be here?
Because I was waiting forever for my green card, which just came in, so I have to go back to Canada to get that. But I was waiting forever to go to America, and I hadn't really thought of here. Like my friend Kat, I'm friends with Catherine Ryan, and she moved here years ago when
Never
we were
heard
both
of her.
really young. And she had told me,
new up and coming comedian.
She might make it one day. But she told me, I remember her telling me years ago, she was like, "There's so much work here. You got to come here." But I just kind of not really thought about it. And I do think people in Canada aren't even as aware of how famous she is, because we're so obsessed with looking at the States and being like, oh, look at Russell Peters, that nobody back home, I think it's changing, kind of gave her the credit that she was due.
Oh, yeah.
We're just sheltered here.
She's fucking stormed it over here.
She's amazing and one of the kindest people I've ever worked with.
It's incredible how well she's done. And the fact that she came over here as a single mom with a young kid and did it on the circuit is fucking hard to do as a woman, as a mother, and to do it with as a single parent. I have so much respect for her, because that's fucking, it's just, to me, it's more props to her. And it also goes to show you that if you fucking hustle here, you can, there's work to be had here. If you're good and you can hustle and you can
she told me that years ago and I didn't listen. I was like, no, I got to go to the States. So I focused so hard on getting this stuff to get the green card that I didn't even really think about here. And then when COVID hit and the green card that was supposed to take 2 years was going to take 4 to 5, I just felt stuck, and I was like, I don't want to be stuck in Canada. I've headlined all the clubs. I'm just doing them once a year in a big circle over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I got the ancestry visa. It took 9 days.
I know, it's
compared
wild,
to how
right?
long it took for the American thing, and hardly any money compared to the thousands that we spent to get to America, where I don't even know if I want to be. And I just had said to my husband, I was like, look, I think I'm going to go. And I was going to go back and forth. But then I was like, you know what?
What did he say when you said that?
He was like, I'll support you. I understand that.
He's in the industry,
He's in the industry. He gets it. And the original plan was to go more back and forth than I have, and for him to come here. And he did come here for a few months, but then he got work and had to go. And our business. When you have work, you got to go.
Yeah.
But at the same time, most of the stuff that he was directing wasn't filming in Toronto. So I was away from him anyway. So I was away from him for 3
He would be filming and wherever.
Yes, exactly.
And even if you were home, it would still be.
So that's what there was one year where he was in Ottawa most of the time, because there's so much stuff that's filmed there.
Yeah.
That I was like,
is there a lot that's filmed there?
So much stuff. They get tax breaks for filming there. So almost all of those.
I was just assuming everything films in BC.
All of those Christmas movies are filmed there. Most of the Hallmark movies, a lot of those Lifetime movies, all filmed there.
Right.
So
okay.
He was away so much that I was like, I'm not going to stay here for a marriage when he's away all the time.
Yeah.
So I talked to him and he was like, I understand, go do what you need to do and we'll make it work. And for the most part we have FaceTime makes it a lot easier. Like, I don't know how people did long distance before.
FaceTime, texting, you can constantly be in contact. Like my boyfriend, when I'm back home in Canada, there's an 8-hour time difference. It's fucking hard to do that, but at least we have the possibility of doing it.
Exactly. So it is tough, but we make it work. Now there is a point where like he kind of is like, okay,
what's happening?
Are you going to start making money soon? Are you going to, do you know what I mean? I definitely have to be more mindful of that.
Yeah.
And try to like, I think I thought it was going to be quicker here. And a lot of things happen for me quickly here, and I don't give myself credit for that. Like getting in at the comedy store and working.
Yeah.
But I do think I thought I was going to make money faster, like more money faster than I have.
Right. I know somebody who's been like sort of, I met them and they said they've been auditioning to be a regular at the comedy store for 10 years.
Here?
And they're still not in.
Wow. That kind of makes me feel good.
Trial 10 spots.
Okay.
I was super happy.
You're going to have to tell me who that is.
Because I've been here. Yeah. I'll tell you off camera. I've been here for 4 years. And obviously the pandemic cut out 2 years of that. But so I've been hustling, trying to get in there. And I'm now fully at the comedy store as well. And it does feel like it's a big mark over here. And people who know, like the ones who know, it is a big mark.
I think
to
I'm
get
lucky.
in there.
Like I showcased there my first weekend in town. And then I got like the 10 spot and the 20 spot. And then I was in.
That's a big deal.
So it did happen. That happened quickly.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I was really in denial. I thought the festival was going to be a big thing. It's not. It's how they used to say about Just for Laughs, where you can get TV deals, you can whatever. That doesn't happen at Edinburgh anymore.
No,
and
it's just not the.
I was under the illusion that if I did well there, I would get all this stuff, and that never happened.
Are you getting messages from Canadian comedians who are like, I think I'm going to go up and do it? I get
constantly,
so many messages.
and I'm always like, why? I tell them, I say, if you want to spend $10,000 for artistic merit, do it, but you're not going to get any. Like it doesn't.
You'll become
work
a better
that way.
comedian,
sure.
I think.
Yeah.
But is it worth it? I don't know. You have to know why you're doing it, and you have to have
go back
specific goals.
again if artistically I had something that I really needed to get out of me for that month, because you're not going to make money unless you're a name.
No,
it's
do you want to hear the craziest thing I heard?
Yes.
I'm not going to say who it is.
You'll tell me after.
I'll tell you after.
Okay.
All of that. But there's a comedian who I love. He's fantastic. Does really well. Tours very well as well. He's been on TV. I think he's done Live at the Apollo. He's done TV work. He's decently well known. He was at the Pleasance this year. He sold out every single show.
Okay.
It wasn't a huge room, but he sold out every single show. He was billed by them couple £1,000 afterwards for what he owed them after a sellout run.
That's not the first story like that I've heard.
And that's fucking obscene to me.
That's not the first story like
that
I've heard.
You hustle for a month and you bring them business and you hustle and you perform and you fucking still owe them money. It's a Ponzi scheme. Get fucked. Absolutely not. It's such bullshit. I'm like, this is not the way anymore. It's just not the way.
No, it's not. But I think for me, I was I didn't have the right facts.
But I don't think you even can. Like, I thought I had a lot of the facts, but even still, when I went up there,
did you not expect to get more out of it than you did?
Yeah, of course I did.
Me too.
And I was like, okay, I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be tough. I know that it was 10 times harder than I thought it was going to be. I cried every single day. And I was doing 6 shows a day. I was flying my own show. I was trying to make money from other places because I was losing money so fast.
Yeah.
I was like just hustling. I was stressed out all the time. It was like, it's brutal. And then you just see everyone walking around and everyone's going, everything's great. Social media, like all over Instagram and shit. But then you'll see people on the street and you're like, oh my God, you just had this great show and they're just crying in the street, being like, life is awful. And you're like, what is this thing up here?
I think for me, and even like that, like for me, I went with, full disclosure, my husband paid for my Edinburgh bill, which I'm so grateful for. So I didn't have to, I did a few other extra shows, but I didn't need to. So I didn't have that. And I also had my own place. Like I rented my own apartment, so I didn't have to stay with other comics.
But you're not rich. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That was the money that we had set aside for a year before I moved here because we knew that was going to be a big bill. So I think for me, it was so stressful for me not having those extra worries. I couldn't imagine for those comics who are struggling even more financially.
Yeah.
That must have been... I think if I had to do that in my 20s, that would have broke me.
That's why it's become such like a white middle class festival, is because, and people criticize it for doing that because so many people just simply cannot afford to go up there. And when you look at some of the, I'm not going to name names, but some of the controversy that's been coming out this week of some of the middle class comics and the things they get away with for shit they were doing at the festival. These were shows and jokes they were doing at the festival, and they weren't pulled up on it. And somebody was like, well, doesn't that tell you a lot about who's up there watching them?
Interesting. I never thought about that. But that's why I was so confused about the middle class thing, because when people were like, oh, so-and-so's middle class, I was like,
yeah,
aren't we all? Like, I don't understand.
No, that means
I didn't know that meant upper
because
class. So what's upper class then? Like
upper class
like
is
Rishi Sunak? Is that upper class?
Yeah, like aristocrats.
Okay.
You're like 152nd in line for the throne. Like your parents are a duke, or you're like old money. You have like a big estate.
So middle class here are what we would consider rich in Canada.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes so much more sense to me now.
Yeah. And so yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we would consider you wealthy in Canada for what most people consider like fairly middle class here. We would consider like, oh, you're doing really well. Like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. So you moved here. What do you think the biggest change has been since you've come here? Like fundamentally that you've changed about yourself? What have you learned about yourself since you've come here?
I've learned that I'm very introverted. I think that was, and my mental health wasn't great. I think for me, I was kind of in denial about both those things. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how to put it. Like I quit drinking years ago. So I've been sober for almost 5 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I think moving here,
that's a big change too.
It is a big change.
Especially in this industry to be sober. That's a big deal.
But moving here, it's been hard for me to make friends and meet people.
Because it's a big drinking culture.
It is. And not only that, but I'm very shy. I know I don't come off like it because I'm a comic and whatever, but I'm really shy. So after shows, unless somebody is aggressively like, we're going out, I would just kind of slink off and go home.
Yeah, I do that too a lot.
So I found it really hard to kind of make friends here. And I think that's been hard for me. I'm a lot more secluded here than I am at home because I had so many friends that would just come by the house at home all the time, and I don't really have that here. Especially because you meet people and you're like, oh, come by, and they're like, I live 2 hours away. I live on the other end of London.
Literally, like when somebody lives on the other side of London, when I met my boyfriend, I set my radius so small.
I don't blame you.
And he lives in East London. I live in East London, and I just like
I consider Bobby Mayer a good friend, and we never see each other. I went to his house once, and it took me like an hour and a half each way. And now he's always like, you should come back again. I'm like, yeah, I'll get on it. Like it's so far.
I know.
So it's tough. Like I have like some people who live in North London that I see Tiff, I see Catherine. Like I have people that live close by, but if they're not available, I don't have anyone, right? So it's just different for me.
As you get older, I think, and you're more mature, there's a lot of younger people in this industry too, right? At our level.
Yes.
And so we've talked about this before about how like we can relate to each other a lot more just because I think we're just like kind of grown-ups, and also we just want to do our job and go in and we want to work and whatever, and we don't really want to get caught up in the so-and-so's fucking so-and-so and this drama is going on and this and that and the other. We just kind of want to fucking do our jobs, be comics, do well, keep going, make money, like, you know, do all that shit. And we just like, and like a lot of the bullshit, a lot of that stuff happens within those comic friend groups. So when you're a little bit older, you're a little bit more removed, you don't want to go get fucking coked up with all these young comics.
I don't. And
like that's just not my idea of a good time.
I had it was difficult for me because being in Canada, I could walk into any club in the country and they would know who I was and treat me with respect. And
I don't have the same.
You know,
they're like, sorry, who are you,
know
bitch?
What I mean? But coming here to a place where like I was literally like begging for like 5 minutes, 7 minute spot, like that to me was hard. It was really hard to go.
It's humbling
to go back to that.
Yeah.
And there are some clubs that like still don't write me back, and I've just given up because I'm like, fuck you. Like I've written you a million times. I do weekends at the Comedy Store. I've given up.
No, you can't. You have to go. But I don't care. You have to be the rock in the show.
I don't care enough to do that. Like I'm in with the clubs that I want to be in with. So now for me, if somebody doesn't. It's not even about treat me with respect because I get it. You don't know who I am comedically, but I am a human being and I am an adult. So if somebody speaks down to me for inquiring about work, I'm done with you. I don't need to play your fucking club. Do you know what I mean? So
I just don't have any self-respect.
But
so
I wouldn't have been like
groveling.
that in my 20s. I would have been there every day groveling. And maybe I'm wrong.
But you've also been in the industry longer. How long have you been doing this for?
A long time.
Yeah, like I'm
very long
7 years in.
Okay.
So I feel like I've
been about 15 to 17 years, depending on what you
right. So when
work started,
So. Yeah, 7 years, and that includes like the pandemic, whatever. Everyone has a fucking caveat of the pandemic now. So I guess 5 years of comedy for me.
Oh, come on.
But it's 7 years, right?
Yeah.
That's since I started. And for me, I just think like I'm newish to this whole thing. So I think if I have to eat shit and kiss somebody's ass, it's just kind of part and parcel.
I don't mind that. I'll do that. But be kind. So if
don't be a
I'm
dickhead.
asking someone for stage time and they're like, you know what, I need to see you or whatever, no problem. I'll go. I'll do a free open spot for you. I'll do whatever. I don't care. But I just don't want to be spoken down to. And I think for me coming here, there's ups and downs. Like I wish I did this in my 20s because I think I'd be a lot farther along in comedy. But I also think,
but like I wish I started comedy in my 20s.
Okay,
because I never did. I waited to my 30s because I was so nervous to do it, and then I feel like I'm so far behind people like you who have done so much, and your voice is so much more refined because you've been going for so long. So obviously it is. And then I go, fuck, if I wish I could have had the guts to start then. But then also I wouldn't be able to say the things I'm saying now on stage or have the life that I've had to be able to talk about if I had. I think there's just pros and cons to all of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think in Canada, the good thing about Canadian comics over here, why I love Bobby, Catherine's great, you're great. Like there's a lot of great Canadian comics over here. And one of the things with that is like you have to be so fucking scrappy in Canada because there's so many comics, so few work, so little work, right? So we all have to be really scrappy. You have to get good quick to get those few spots that are available. And so you've built that up. And so you come here and you're good at kind of getting that. And that's why you're not starting from the fucking bottom here. I think. And the reason you're in at the fucking Comedy Store within a year, not even a year, you were in within the first couple months at the Comedy Store, which is crazy and very unheard of. But when people hear this, who are newer comics, they're going to be like, fuck that.
I think that's the thing too, because sometimes when I show up at shows, people think I'm new and they'll talk to me like I'm new. I never correct them because I find it adorable. You know what I mean?
I think so.
And I don't want to correct them, be like, no, I've been doing this 15 years and then go on stage and bomb. You know what I mean? So I never correct people, but that's kind of the perception when I show up for the first time to a show and people don't know me. They think I'm new and they'll be like, oh yeah, so have you done the Gong Show? Have you done this? I'm like, no, like, because I don't.
Yeah.
Like, how do you don't want to tell people, I'm actually really good, because you might have a bad set and then you're going to look like a fucking idiot.
Oh my God. There's this guy who happened to get, I think he got like an open spot at Top Secret. I don't even remember his name. And I'm there. I'm like, Top Secret is one of my regular clubs, right? I'm like, that's probably my home club here. I feel I was really lucky to get in with them in my first week here. And I gig with them all the time. I fucking love Top Secret so much. And it just has some of the best crowds. And I was there and I was doing one of my regular gigs, but I guess this guy he doesn't really follow me, and we had like one weird random open spot, like when I sort of first came here, and then that's it. He's never really seen me since. And then not too long ago, he was at Top Secret for like an open spot, and I was hosting, or I was like doing a 20-minute set or whatever on a whatever day. And I'm like fairly regular then. He goes, oh, this is pretty cool for people like you and me, to be here. And I was like, bro, we are not the same. He's like, for comics like us. I'm like, we are not us. There is no us here.
I love that.
I was just like, oh my God, which is so cunty to say, but I was just like, whatever. But it is kind of funny because then you don't want to be like, actually, and then you fucking bomb or something.
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing.
Yeah.
So tell me, so this is a question I like to ask everyone. What is something in yourself or in your life that you hope never changes? It doesn't, again, need to be a huge thing, but just something that you never want to change in your life.
I always want to have a dog. Always.
You always want to have a dog.
Yeah. I want my love for dogs to never change. And
That's
always
cute.
have a dog.
I like that. Does your dog help with your mental health and just like going
100%?
Because I guess your dog forces you out of the house and going for walks and doing that. I've heard that with people who have like.
Well, I'm responsible for more than just me, and I think that really helps. And it's really good to have somebody like to cuddle with sometimes, like when I do feel lonely or like come home from a gig that didn't go well, or I am like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I'll just look at him and I'm like, oh my God, he's the cutest thing in the world.
What's his name?
RoboCop.
RoboCop?
Yeah.
That's so cute. What do you don't call him RoboCop the whole time?
I call him Robo.
Robo.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
And he's a little like
Pomeranian,
right? Yeah.
So
he's a little like fluff ball.
Yeah, he's a little fluff ball, a little teddy bear.
But you're not a rich girl. You just have a little purse dog, and you stay at the Waldorf, and you wear Chanel earrings.
I moonlighted as a rich girl, and that life is far behind me now. Now I'm a struggling artist again, and
I love that. Well, fucking welcome to the club of struggles, girl. Because yeah, we're happy to have you. It is rough out there, but I love this. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. I love this. This has been amazing. Okay, so do you have anything you want to plug? This will probably be out in a couple weeks.
Just plug my social media at Michelle's Funny, like Michelle S. Funny on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter.
And you have 2 albums out on Spotify that people can listen to or download on iTunes.
Yep.
What are they called?
You Know What You Did. That was the first one. And then Botoxic. That was my second release.
That's a great title.
Thank you.
That's very good. We didn't even get to talk about our love of Botox. Oh my God. Thank you guys. Bye.